Yo, it's me, your least favorite degenerate Weibo here, and I'm back here with another video. Today I decided I'm just gonna review Persona 5 Strikers since, I kind of bought it recently and I got no other ideas for content, so enjoy, I guess. First off, we'll start with the gameplay. I think it's pretty solid. I like it. I think it's pretty fun, mix of typical games in the genre that it is. I don't know the name, sorry, don't kill me. And bringing aspects of Persona 5 to that game, which made it pretty fun. And speaking of keeping things for Persona 5, it did a wonderful job at keeping the aesthetic of Persona 5 alive in this game, and I'd like to congratulate the team behind that because they did an amazing job. Now for the story of this game, which is probably the weakest part because, to be honest, the story isn't that good. I wasn't going into the game expecting much, but I still kind of left a little disappointed, especially with the first 3/4 of the game. For me, at least, during this part, the plot was pretty uninteresting, and I could tell it was developing into something, but it wasn't really that big of a thing, and the big meat in action doesn't really happen till later in the game. And while I'm off on this, might as well add that I think the game did not have to be as long as it did to tell the story that it did, because I think definitely, at least in the first half, it felt like I was just doing a bunch of the dungeons without progressing that far into the story. But luckily, after the turn of the first half of the game, it starts picking up the pace, which is better, but I will go into my issues with the second half right about now. Alright, so here's some of my issues with the second half. Firstly, spoilers for the end of the game, by the way. Yaldabaoth 2, Electric Boogaloo. Not a fan. They could have done anything else. They could have stopped the game at Konoe's Palace, though no one was really expecting them to do that because, it's a Persona game, you have to fight a god or whatever. But it still would have been a nice change of pace, because, to be honest, this boss, or their motives or anything, it just wasn't very original. It was literally Yaldabaoth 2.0, and I didn't enjoy it that much. I mean, hell, I think it's even worse than the original Yaldabaoth, which he wasn't that great of a villain, but at least in Persona 5, he was original. Whereas in Persona 5 Strikers, it's literally Control-C, Control-V of Yaldabaoth, but with a different name. Well, now that I got my biggest complaint out of the way, I think I might as well move on to what I liked about the game, besides the gameplay.
Alright, everybody together! Let's finish this for good!
Let's go! Come on!
Joker, finish it!
So first off, I actually thought Zenkichi's character arc was actually pretty good, even though it is sort of... I would have to agree it is a little bit of a reused idea from Dojima from Persona 4. I still think they executed it really well, and it kind of made him feel like a different character in my mind. Because even though they have a lot of similarities, I think that he does enough to define himself as a character and a really cool member of the party. And then we got my favorite boss of the game, which is Kanoe. Because I feel like his backstory was pretty good, and it's very fleshed out, defining who he is and his big motivations for why he's using Emma to brainwash people, basically. And you know, the boss fight was actually fucking epic. I like that. Even though like the whole like robot thing was cheesy, it kind of made sense because of his deluded view of how he saw himself as a hero, and it was really fitting. Also, the soundtracks fucking slapped. In his boss fight, they were the best in the entire game. You cannot fight me. That's just fact. Alright, so I'm giving Sophie her own section because I feel like there's a lot of good things about her, but then also a lot of bad things. So I'm pretty mixed about her character. Overall, I think her progression in the story and like the whole events, they're pretty good. They're not the best, in my opinion, but I think it's pretty heartwarming and cute with a story. So I can't really bash it too hard. But then there's the other side of the coin of me that kind of says like, oh, the idea of her being an AI, it's a little weird how human she like seems to be at the beginning. Because even though she was like questioning what emotions were, like what the human was by nature, it was pretty clear from the beginning that she kind of did feel the same things. So it was like, it wasn't as big of a moment for me in the game when she suddenly is like, oh my god, I found that I have emotions or whatever. Whereas with Aegis, for example, I know people compare the two a lot still. Throughout the game, it's very apparent how cold Aegis is from the beginning because she's a robot. But then slowly you start to hear it in the voice actor as well. How they're like slowly becoming more and more natural as events transpire around them. And the structure of the dialogue is also changed slightly throughout the game. So you can tell like, you know, something is happening. Whereas, in my opinion, Sophia, it wasn't nearly as like smooth for me because I kind of felt like from the beginning I was like, oh, you kind of seem a little too human for an AI. Alright, my final thoughts. It's not a bad game. It's alright. Not a good one either, in my opinion. You know, I wouldn't say it's anything like huge, like oh my god, Persona 5 2, because it's the summer after, but in my opinion, it's just a sequel in name and it doesn't really capture the same feels as Persona 5's story did, while also being eerily similar to it. As for a rating, I'd say I have to give this game a Yaldabaoth out of 10. That's it. See you fuckers next time, and I'ma go. Peace.
Wrong here. Never steal someone else's freedom.
No! I can't lose! Not now!
Finish the request.